For over 500 years, Rome ruled the ancient world. Its armies were unstoppable. Its cities were filled with wealth and power. But suddenly, the greatest empire in history collapsed. How did it happen? For centuries, the Roman Empire ruled the ancient world. Its armies conquered vast lands across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Its roads connected continents. Its cities were filled with wealth, power, and innovation. At its height, Rome controlled nearly 1/4 of the world's population. It seemed unstoppable. But by the year 476 AD, the mighty Roman Empire in the West had completely collapsed. So what happened? How did the most powerful empire in ancient history fall apart? The story begins with expansion. Rome grew so large that it became increasingly difficult to govern. Communication was slow, and distant provinces were hard to control. To manage this massive territory, Emperor Diocletian divided the empire into two parts, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. While the East remained strong, the West began to weaken. Political instability became a serious problem. Emperors were constantly overthrown, assassinated, or replaced by military generals. In just 50 years, more than 20 emperors ruled Rome. Most of them died violently. At the same time, the Roman economy was struggling. Heavy taxes burdened citizens, inflation weakened the currency, and trade declined. Many people abandoned the cities and moved to the countryside. The Roman military also began to change. Instead of loyal Roman soldiers, the empire increasingly relied on foreign mercenaries. These soldiers were often less loyal to Rome itself. Meanwhile, powerful tribes from northern Europe began pushing into Roman territory. Groups like the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns attacked the borders again and again. In 410 AD, the city of Rome was shockingly sacked by the Visigoths. It was the first time in nearly 800 years that Rome had fallen to a foreign enemy. The psychological impact was enormous. Then came another devastating blow. In 455 AD, the Vandals invaded Rome and looted the city for 2 weeks. The once glorious capital was now a shadow of its former self. Finally, in 476 AD, the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was removed from power. A Germanic leader named Odoacer took control. This moment is traditionally considered the end of the Western Roman Empire. But Rome's legacy did not disappear. The Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, would survive for nearly another 1,000 years. Roman law, engineering, architecture, and culture continued to shape the world. Even today, the influence of Rome is everywhere, from government systems to modern languages. The Roman Empire may have fallen, but its impact on human civilization will last forever.
Look at a map of ancient Europe. Italy isn't just a peninsula, it's a geographical cheat code. Surrounded by seas on 3 sides and shielded by the massive Alps to the north, it looks like the perfect, impenetrable fortress. But this perfect geography was actually a trap. To survive in this fortress, Rome had only 2 choices: starve in isolation or conquer everything the light touches. Today, we decode the hidden geographic blueprint that forced a small city of farmers to build the deadliest military machine in human history. If you stand in the center of Italy, you'll notice a massive spine of mountains, the Apennines. They cut the peninsula in half. For early Romans, this meant limited agricultural land. As their population exploded, they hit a geographical ceiling. They didn't conquer because they were naturally bloodthirsty. They conquered because they needed grain. Their geography dictated a brutal rule: expand your borders, or your people will starve. And to expand, they needed to completely redesign the way wars were fought. The traditional Greek phalanx was a terrifying wall of spears, perfect for flat ground. But take that into the rugged, uneven hills of Italy, and it breaks apart. Rome realized their terrain required flexibility. Enter the Roman legion system and the gladius, a short, incredibly lethal stabbing sword. In the tight, chaotic valleys where long spears were useless, the gladius allowed a Roman soldier to step inside the enemy's guard and deliver a fatal strike in seconds. The weapon wasn't just forged by blacksmiths, it was shaped by the landscape itself. Once Rome secured the peninsula, they faced the Mediterranean Sea. In the ancient world, water wasn't a barrier, it was a superhighway. Moving goods by sea was nearly 40 times cheaper than moving them by land. To secure their survival, they couldn't just share the sea, they had to own it. By defeating Carthage, Rome turned the entire Mediterranean into Mare Nostrum, our sea. It was the ultimate geopolitical monopoly, creating a wealth loop that powered the empire for 5 centuries. Geography gave Rome the ultimate launchpad, but it also cursed them with borders that were impossible to defend forever. The very rivers and mountains that protected them early on would eventually become the highways for their destruction.
Rome had conquered the Italian peninsula. They had broken out of their geographic cage. But as they stood on the southern shores of Italy, looking out at the Mediterranean Sea, they realized a terrifying truth. They had just stepped into a much larger trap. The sea did not belong to them. It belonged to Carthage. While Rome was a nation of farmers and foot soldiers, Carthage was a naval monster, a merchant empire that held a complete monopoly over the Mediterranean trade routes. For Rome, the message was clear: stay on the land and eventually be choked to death, or step into the water and face annihilation. Look at the map. Between the tip of Italy and the coast of Africa lies the island of Sicily. In geopolitics, this is a choke point. Whoever controls Sicily controls the passage between the eastern and western Mediterranean. Carthage already had their grip on it. Rome knew they had to take it. But there was one massive problem. The Romans didn't know how to build warships. They didn't even know how to sail. So they did what geography forced them to do. They adapted. Finding a wrecked Carthaginian ship, the Romans reverse-engineered it. But they knew they couldn't outsail the masters of the sea. So they changed the rules of geography. They invented the corvus, a massive, spiked boarding bridge attached to their ships. Instead of trying to ram the enemy, they dropped the bridge, locking the ships together. In an instant, they turned a naval battle into a land battle. And on land, nobody beat the Roman legion. By overcoming their maritime weakness, Rome didn't just defeat Carthage, they seized the Mediterranean superhighway. But Carthage wasn't dead. Because Rome now owned the sea, a brilliant Carthaginian general named Hannibal realized he couldn't attack by water. Geography forced him to take the most impossible land route in history, straight over the freezing, deadly Alps, with war elephants.
Rome had done the impossible. They conquered the sea and locked Carthage out of the Mediterranean. But by turning the sea into a Roman lake, they forced their greatest enemy to do something utterly insane. A Carthaginian general named Hannibal realized that if the water was closed, he had to attack the impenetrable fortress itself. He wouldn't sail. He would march. Look at the map of Italy. In our first episode, we called the Alps a geographical cheat code, a massive, freezing shield protecting Rome from the north, but geography is a double-edged sword. Hannibal didn't see a shield. He saw a blind spot, leading tens of thousands of mercenaries and terrifying African war elephants. He marched straight into the freezing, deadly peaks of the Alps. It was a geographic nightmare.
He lost half his army to the cold and the cliffs, but those who survived shattered Rome's illusion of safety. Hannibal descended into Italy and unleashed hell. At the Battle of Cannae, he used the terrain to surround and slaughter 50,000 Roman soldiers in a single afternoon. It was the darkest day in Roman history. Any other empire would have surrendered. But this is where Rome's geographic blueprint saved them. The Italian peninsula provided an almost infinite supply of manpower and grain. Rome simply refused to die. They absorbed the blows, trapped Hannibal in Italy for 15 years, and eventually counter-attacked Carthage itself. In the end, Carthage was wiped from the map. Rome didn't just survive its geographical cage, it weaponized it, becoming the undisputed master of the ancient world. The Roman geographical blueprint was complete. But fast forward 2,000 years, and another empire would face the exact same geographic trap. Only this time it wasn't a warm peninsula in the Mediterranean, it was a miserable, freezing, isolated island on the edge of Europe. And yet, this island would go on to conquer 25% of the Earth.
For centuries, the Roman army was one of the most powerful military forces in history. It helped Rome grow from a small city into a vast empire that stretched across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. What made this army so feared was not just its size, but its discipline, training, and organization. Roman soldiers were called legionaries, and they trained hard to fight in formation. Every soldier had a role, and every movement on the battlefield was carefully coordinated. Unlike many armies of the ancient world, the Romans built their strength on consistency and order. Their weapons were simple but deadly. The standard Roman soldier carried a short sword called a gladius, a heavy throwing spear called a pilum, and a large shield for protection. The shield wall made Roman units extremely difficult to break. When Roman legions marched into battle, they advanced with precision and confidence. They could build camps quickly, march long distances, and fight in almost any environment. This made them extremely dangerous during long campaigns. Roman generals also understood the importance of strategy. They did not always win because they had more soldiers. They won because they used terrain, timing, and formation better than their enemies. The Roman army was also one of the first true professional armies in history. Many soldiers served for years, and some made the army their life's work. This created a loyal and experienced fighting force. The Romans were also excellent engineers. They built roads, forts, bridges, and walls to support their military machine. These structures helped the army move fast and hold territory for a long time. The Roman army was not unbeatable, but it was incredibly adaptable. It learned from its enemies and changed over time. That is one reason it remained so powerful for so long. In the end, the Roman army became a symbol of Roman strength itself. It was the engine that expanded the empire, defended its borders, and shaped the ancient world. So when people ask how powerful the Roman army really was, the answer is simple. It was one of the greatest military forces ever created.